Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here on Cluiche with me, Séamus, Brady, our host. For this one I am joined by Sinéad Farrell of the 42. We are going to run through another bumper weekend of action across Gaelic Games. And don't forget guys as well, get involved in the comments, let us know your say. We had big action in the All-Ireland preliminary quarter finals, the Táilteann Cup Semi Finals, action across all four codes of the sport. So do get your comments in straight away. Sinéad, pleasure to have you back on the show. How are you?
I'm good, Séamus, how are you?
Good. We've a comment in here straight off the bat, actually, from Gary Hutton. He says, as a Derry person, I'm at a loss to what is going on. It's like waking up from a nightmare, but Dublin will win the All-Ireland. I don't know, Gary, you think this week, not as bad as weekends that have gone by, but that is the place where we will start. I mean, this is the game that everybody was looking at to see, would Derry crash out of the All-Ireland? And I'm going to just straight up hold my hands up. I thought that they would. I thought when this game was announced, I thought this is where Derry's year comes to an end. Derry showed more grit than I thought they would. I thought that when Mayo really asked the questions, that Derry wouldn't really have the answers. I said it on Matthew's podcast. Matthew put the clip up. I'm now getting torn to shreds, probably rightly so, because I said it with such conviction. I really thought Mayo would beat them. But ultimately, Derry win on penalties 4-3. What did you make of this game?
Yeah, unbelievable. I mean, yesterday was chaos in terms of trying to watch all the games. As people kind of helpfully pointed out on Twitter during the week, there was so many matches and there was crossover and you're having to double screen. But Mayo Derry was definitely one game I was watching no matter what was going to cross over in front of it. And like that, just given Derry's form in the championship, you know, and how their flykeeper tactic with Oran Lynch has not been working and has been really hurting them at times. I did think Mayo were going to win, and particularly in Castlebar as well. And they've been doing well, came in off the back of that brilliant performance against Dublin. They probably would have been a bit disappointed with how they didn't close it out, and they just allowed Dublin to come and get the equaliser late in the game. But still, you were thinking, with the way Derry are playing, Mayo should definitely win this game. But when it went to penalties, I actually kind of changed. Then I was like, Mayo should have put this game away earlier before now, especially when they got the impetus from their penalty in normal time. And then the way it turned out that Ryan O'Donoghue's penalty ended up getting saved, they had their chances to do it. And it is just something that tends to follow them, that when they are under the cosh, they can sometimes, it doesn't work out for them. Now, they've had other occasions where they have pushed over the line, but when they should have put Derry away, they didn't, and Derry just hung on. That was funny. Chrissy McCaig's equaliser was what put it to extra time, and then Jordan Flynn's point was what put it to penalty. So it was always kind of in the balance like that, but I just felt once it went to penalties that Derry were going to do it. And I'm not necessarily that on paper Derry's penalty takers were better than Mayo's, and especially like if you were looking at it, you think, yeah, Cillian O'Connor, Diarmuid O'Connor, Ryan O'Donoghue, they'll all score, but then Ryan's get saved, and you're looking at maybe Derry's ones by contrast, and you're like, Conor Doherty was the one who ended up scoring the winner. He's a defender, you know. It was weird, but I just felt that they were going to do it. So I'm kind of shocked that comment came in there. If they said I'm a Mayo person and I'm at a loss, yeah, I could see where they're coming from. But I actually just saw there, like, you know, we said this before on the podcast, that like Mayo will never die, and we've had evidence of that today in that they had a club game between Charlestown and Brady, and Matthew Ruan, Aidan O'Shea and Paul Towie all played, and Paul Towie scored 1-7. So 24 hours after a huge disappointment, they're already back. You know, they're playing for the clubs. They're not, and understandably would be, you know, consoling themselves this week, but they're already showing that they will just never die. They will be back thereabouts next year. But I just felt when it went to penalties, I was worried for them. And I think, and Enda McGinley said this on the Saturday game last night, I think this result's going to change things for Derry. I could see them getting a big scalp now in the quarterfinals, and they could get Dublin, who they've already beaten in a league final. They could get Kerry as well. They could get Donegal, who they'd love to get revenge over.
There's no finished business there.
I think it's going to completely flip their season now.
Yeah, I definitely want to put it past them. It's the fact that like they've hung on. It's, I don't know. It's like It's like if you, I don't know, it's like if you had an amazing boxer or something and you dominated the rounds but you didn't finish them and now they're still in the fight going into the final furlong. It's like that type of thing where you haven't really finished Derry off. Nobody, like, but the fact that they've lost 3 games yet they're still here. Like, you look at Kerry and Dublin who are like unbeaten, waltzed through the provincial championships, and you're like, how on earth have Kerry and Dublin hit the same stage as Derry have when Derry have lost 3 games and they lost the 3 games on the bounce, yet they were still in the championship. So it's a debate worth having, but they're here now. And to be honest, the championship is better that we have contenders here and we have a team in Derry that could really beat a Dublin or a Kerry. I really think they could on their best day. We've seen it in the league final. We saw it in the All-Ireland Semi Final last year. Just
And in the
don't.
league as well, when Derry went down to Kerry. You know, I
Yeah.
think they will fear,
Too.
both Dublin and Kerry will fear Derry massively.
Yeah.
And with the momentum they've gotten from that result and the manner in which they did it, with all the pressure that they've been under, with all the stick that Oren Lynch has taken as well. I think that's, and Mickey Hart too. Like, he could not have been more pleased to silence a few people with that result. I think it's going to bring them on massively. Like, towards the end of the game, you know, when they had possession and Conor Glass gave it away, and he really gave it away. Like, he hand passed it straight away to a Mayo player, like, so uncharacteristic of him. And I think that's pretty much what led to the final equaliser that sent it to penalties. But even still, with the way it turned out, I think Derry are definitely going to be feared now going forward.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I think they definitely will. And like, speaking about Derry with the penalties, like Derry are 3 from 3 now for penalty shootouts. Ulster final, league final, and I feel like that kind of confidence would have come out of them when it was got to penalties. That, like, look, we've done this before, and I think that they would have had the confidence that they would get over the line in that situation. That, look, for Mayo, it's like, well, if you're ever going to beat us, it was in the normal time, because if it comes down to a game of luck, Mayo haven't exactly been the luckiest over the years. So I think that Derry would have been more confident heading into the penalty shootout. And speaking then of that, like Kevin McStay said it in his post-match interview, that, you know, it's almost like the story of their season. They failed to close out the game. They failed to close out the Connacht final. They failed to close out the game against Dublin, which would have put them top of the group. And then they failed to close out this game against Derry in normal time, albeit Jordan Flynn did get the equaliser, which sent it to penalties. So for Mayo fans, it must be frustrating that it was the same issue at their Achilles heel all season, that just they couldn't finish teams off.
They kind of live with frustration, though, don't they? Like, frustration comes in many forms for them. And what you mentioned there about the Connacht final, like, I did a piece about that, kind of nearly more from the perspective of Galway and how they really pressed up on Mayo's kickouts towards the end of that game, and that was the winning of it. The last point, the one that Conor Gleeson took from the free, Mayo kick out, John Maher, and I think somebody, I can't remember who else, converged on whoever it was from Mayo that had gotten the kick out, overcarried, and a free. And again, against Dublin, as soon as Mayo got the lead and score, I knew there was one chance left for Dublin. I knew they were going to score. I just knew it. And I think I counted, it was something like 32 seconds from the second that Cluxton took the kick out to Costello getting the equaliser. And Costello actually should have had a goal chance. He just slipped, and then just to get something, he hand passed it over the bar. Like, obviously, you have to give a lot of credit to Kieran Kilkenny for how he fetched it. Like, the catch was pretty spectacular, and it was out near the sideline. Had Cluxton put a little bit more power behind the kick out, it actually would have gone out. But in fairness, he kept it in. But how Mayo didn't get cynical in that second. As soon as he came down, he should have been brought down. Now, they probably would have gotten a free, but you would have given your team a chance to get back. They were completely overrun. And all they had to do then was just pick whichever forward, and they ended up sending it into Costello for the equalising point. Like, that had to have been a small bit annoying for them. But at the same time, if you can, you know, on any given day against Dublin, you don't know if a team is going to be able to live with them or get beaten by 8 points. Mm-hmm. And to have done that, to have stayed with them, they'd have to be happy about that as well. But you're right, like, not closing out games, and again against Derry, it cropped up again. And they didn't have the experience that Derry had with the penalty shootouts. Now, it was still a surprise to see Ryan O'Donoghue miss his. I know Paul Towie did too, but I think he came on as a sub. And I don't know, had Aidan O'Shea been playing, would he have taken a penalty? Quite possibly. He's been playing very well. And I don't know if he takes penalties too often, but he probably would have been one to take one. And you don't want to have to go into a scenario like that when you don't have that experience. If you want to win it, you want to win it in normal time when you have all the control. You don't have as much control in penalties, because O'Donoghue's penalty would have been a good penalty had Oran Lynch gone the wrong way. It was plenty of power behind it. He just happened to guess right. But you don't have as much control in penalties. And for a team like Mayo, who, when they're in the lap of the gods, don't tend to favour very well, you control a win in normal time when you have the most power over it. So yeah, it's frustrating again for them. It comes in so many forms for them almost every year. So it's just another kind of problem on top of the heave that they've had to live with. Like, we know they'll be back again. They're the only team I would back to take as many punches to the gut as they do and not totally regress and, get relegated, get nowhere in the championship. They'll always have some say in it. Just again, this year they have to wait again.
But the fact is, on paper, like, they actually, and it's not going to be a nice one to look at. I'm the same as yourself. I have no doubt that they will come again. I just feel like if you're looking at the pattern in history, you look at the 2000s, they made it to 2 finals in 3 years, in 04 and 06, and then in 07, 08, they were kind of like, 07, 08, 09, they were around like the quarter final kind of stage, and then they fell off a cliff in 2010, lost to Longford in the qualifiers and went out with no say at all. 2 defeats in the championship, the Sligo and Longford, and they were gone. And then they got back into the groove under Horan, made it to a couple of finals, 2012, 2013, and then fell off a cliff in 2018. Knocked out of Connacht, beaten by Kildare in the qualifiers. Then they followed up in the 2020s with, 2 finals against Dublin 2020 and against Mayo in 2021. Now they've had, 3 years of knocked out at the quarterfinals back to back and beaten out the gate in both games, and now out at the preliminary quarterfinals. Like, I think they're in a bit of a slump now. I think that it won't be another 2 years, I think, before we see them back in the final, because I do think when you look at O'Shea, you look at O'Connor, we could see them go. I think it'd be interesting to see how McStay actually handles it. And like, I don't know, speaking of for Derry on their hand, like, as you said, Derry were coming into this game off the back of, the 3 defeats and then barely scraping by Westmeath to book their place in the preliminary quarterfinal. And a lot of people, when they saw Mayo as the team that they were going to play in McHale Park, said that they were done. They've got through that game now on penalties, but they're still alive and they're into the quarterfinals. As you said earlier, I don't think anybody will want to face Derry, because there is that capability that they might just click again and they might just get going, and they're a real threat if they do.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And as I said, like, the likes of Dublin and Kerry, who've been beaten by them in big games, will fear them, because Derry know how to unlock them. And we saw them in the league final. And that's what everybody was so confused about. Like, where's that Derry gone? Against Donegal, again, it was Oran Lynch coming out of the goal that was really killing them. Again, against Galway, they just seemed really confused. They didn't seem to know how to play against one another. Like, they were getting frustrated with themselves. Similarly, against Armagh, they were really, really poor.
I remember the goals in that game, especially, were easy.
Goals have been killing them. Goals have been killing them, and they've been doing it to themselves as well. And I know there was all these discussions about, is the fly keeper, a tactic that teams should stick with. And a lot of former players absolutely hate it. Like, I know they're just recently retired, so they haven't played through it, but they really despise it. And yet, like, when the likes of Kevin McStay, I remember he was asked about it and he was like, well, it's here now and I can't abandon it. I can't have a goalkeeper who can't play that role. I think nearly every team now has to have a utility keeper who can come forward, contribute to the play, take shots at goal, and be able to take long range frees. We saw it today in the Táilteann Cup as well. Nearly every team now is playing that way. So it's a tactic that's going to stay. Now we're going to see these, they look really bad. Like a player takes a shot from 50 yards and the ball just trickles into the net. And it has affected Derry a few times this year. Now, again, we didn't see it really against Mayo. They seemed to kind of tighten things up a bit. And when they got the little bursts and little spurts, they really made use of them. Now, Chris McKay was not the player I expected to score the last minute equaliser, but like he's been around the block a good while now, and I'm sure would have been one of the players that was particularly fed up with the way things were going. For a team like Derry, if they fall off, I could see them really falling off. They could go down the divisions. We might not see them again for a few years because they don't maybe have the tradition of the more established teams. Like they have to keep this going. They have to stay at this level for a while. And I don't know if an All-Ireland is going to be within the next 5 years or so, but they have
that's why Mickey was hired.
Yeah.
Mickey was hired for a long-term project.
And that's why he took the job, and that's why he left Louth in the circumstances that he left, because he can see that. But they have to, it's a very tricky situation for them, because if they did fall off this year, if Mayo bet them yesterday, like I could see them really suffering from that, because they built this, this system and this team that's won back-to-back Ulsters, had gotten to another Ulster final, were really, really competitive. But then in the championship this year, in the Ulster Championship, in the All-Ireland group stage, we're just not the team that we were used to seeing. Weren't the team that we saw in the Division 1 final. And if they had lost, I would have had concerns that it might have really knocked them back, because they just don't have that tradition behind them yet. They're obviously still building it, but it's not that long ago they were in a Division 4 league final, and there's players on the team who remember that time. So to get through that, and I can't overstate it enough. I think it's going to really just reignite them. I think it's going to relieve them as well, and just remind them that we are perfectly capable. This is totally our level, and we're where we deserve to be. I think it's going to be a huge relief to them to know that they are in the All-Ireland Quarter Finals, because they deserve to be here. They're a team on paper that you definitely would have seen getting to this point from earlier in the year. No, you wouldn't have seen them losing 3 of their All-Ireland group games and maybe struggling against a team like Westmeath. No disrespect to them, but you wouldn't have expected to see that. But now that they've gotten that, it's like Kerry the year they won the All-Ireland with Donaghy. They were completely all over the place. And then they played Longford in Killarney. They started Donaghy, and it just completely reignited their season, and they went off from there. I think that will have the same effect for Derry. With Mayo, you mentioned there the players like the likes of O'Shea, Killian, even Diarmid. They were bench players. They were kind of coming on in games. Now I don't know. They have those two guys have had a lot of injuries, and maybe they were trying to conserve them a small bit and maybe really unleash them, if they got to the quarterfinal. But they haven't maybe been as imposing as they have been in the past. I think we'll see O'Shea next year. I do think we will, because he's playing well. He's doing really well under McStay. Now he's a long career, and really, not enough credit gets paid to him for how he continues to come back when he is the lightning rod
with as well.
I mean, within his own county, every time Mayo lose, he bears the brunt of it. If they did, he's probably been getting it in the neck even today, even this time, even though you could not say it was like, the Mayo Dublin game a few years ago when he got taken off and Mayo won, and he didn't play well in the final that time either, but he gets such personal abuse. It's so below the belt. It is so inappropriate and so unfair, and yet he keeps coming back and he keeps playing, and he's so, definitely in terms of like fitness and staying injury free, he's always there. He's always serving Mayo, and he's been doing very well this year. And to find that extra, especially when he maybe was starting to slow, or you thought the years were starting to catch up on him, for him to find a new gear is a massive feat of the player that he is, and how long he's been playing. Like I can remember back, when I was in secondary school was when he made his debut. He's still playing and still doing well for Mayo. So I think he'll stay. I don't know about the O'Connors. Obviously, like they lost Paddy Durkin this year, as a massive loss. To lose your captain. He'd had a very fractured year with injuries and then to tear his ACL. I think it was in like the last second of the game. Like he might have just caught the maybe the last ball and he must have landed awkwardly. And for him to go out like that, he was a huge player to lose and would have made a massive difference yesterday. So they'll have him to come back. I think they'll have O'Shea next year, but yeah, I don't know about maybe the O'Connors, how they're maybe feeling.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think McStay will bring O'Shea back. He definitely backs him, and he said when he was on a pundit, he was very vocal about putting O'Shea at full forward, getting the best out of him, everything like that. And he comes in, first thing he did is Mayo boss. O'Shea deputised a lot more at full forward. Now, we have another comment in here from Gary. He says, to Sinead, I think Derry can't play Donegal because they played them in Ulster. They actually can, Gary. Weird situation, I know, but they actually can play Donegal in the quarterfinal. But he says, I hope we get Kerry. Be interesting. Love your show, Séamus. Thank you very much, Gary, for popping in again with the comments. But yeah, so Derry pick up an absolutely vital win over Mayo, an absolutely crucial win for Derry over Mayo on penalties. And an example I want to bring back up is Kerry in 2009. Remember Kerry getting knocked out of Munster, like should have been beaten by Antrim in the qualifiers, were a penalty kick away from losing to Sligo in the qualifiers. They absolutely crawled through the qualifiers, get Dublin in the All-Ireland Quarter Final, who had just won Leinster. Dublin were expected by a lot of people to blow Kerry away. Kerry blew Dublin away and went on to win the All-Ireland title in 2009. Now, I'm not saying that Derry will win the All-Ireland, but I'm saying that they've got their win in a game where everybody thought that they were going to lose, and maybe they might just get their mojo back. And if they've got their mojo back to the full level that it was in the National League and in the Championship last season, where they arguably should have beat Kerry in that semi-final, they are a dangerous, dangerous matchup for everybody. Because you look at the McKinless shot which Shane Ryan saved. If McKinless' shot went in past Shane Ryan with 10 minutes to go, Derry would have been 5 points clear, and I think they would have closed it out from there. They can definitely beat the top teams when they're at their best. And now that they've beaten Mayo and they're into the quarterfinals, nobody is going to want to play Derry. Let us know in the comments anyway what you make of this game. We're going to move on to the next one. A massive history-making win for Louth. They're into the All-Ireland Quarter Finals, would you believe, for the first time ever. They beat Cork 1-9 to 1-8 in RD. Sam Mulroy's free at the death secures a historic victory for the wee county. What a year for Ger Brennan. What a year for Louth.
Yeah, unbelievable. I think I might have been chatting to you. We were looking towards the season and how things were going to go. Remember, we were talking about Louth and we were talking all about Mickey Hart and the loss of Mickey Hart and how it was going to affect them. Would they be able to respond or survive? Like, it's like he was never there, really, in ways. Like, they have had no problem moving on from him. I think they nearly might have taken issue with the fact that there was so much weight put on the Mickey Hart factor, and that, like, oh, you won't be able to survive without your dad now. Like, he's got Meiji, you won't be able to walk without him. Like, they have been superb this year, stayed up in Division 2. Ger Brennan's made a huge impact. He seems to be quite a popular figure there. Would have been coming in with a big, challenge ahead of him, and has done brilliantly to get them to their first All-Ireland quarter final. It's obviously it's their biggest result now since the 2010 Leinster final, which, I mean, that's what maybe I was talking about, like, say, in the Derry situation, maybe not the same dramatics, but that set Louth back so badly that time. Yeah. It was just such a kill. It was so, the controversy,
I remember as well the fact that, like, they went into round 4, and I remember they got Dublin.
Yeah.
In round 4 of the qualifiers, and Dublin beat them from pillar to post and knocked them out, and it was like the most unfair, cruel way.
Yeah, they were so deflated from it. It was just so draining.
I remember actually in 2010, because I was there at I was at that game, and I remember but I remember distinctly Loud doing a lap of honour. around Croke Park, and they were getting a big round of applause from the Louth fans and a good chunk of the Dublin fans as well, who all kind of were like, they were the Leinster champions. Like, if we're calling a spade, they were the Leinster champions, the rightful ones. We have a couple of comments in here from Matthew, actually. Matthew says, was in Enniskeen, quite ironic, passing the ball backwards led to the losing of the game for Cork, missing 12 shots from 21, not good enough. Thought before drafting in Hurley was a strange call. Seeing what happened with minor and under 20 in Cork football, it's hard to see where we go from here. Fair play to Louth, though. Delighted for their fans. And he says, chatting to some of the Louth fans, they seem happier with Brennan rather than Hart. They say the style of play is much better to watch. And definitely, like, if we're calling a spade as well, and thank you very, very much, Matthew. Obviously, an absolute icon on the show now. It's weird doing a show without Matthew on it. Like, we're on each other's shows every week. But very, very good points made by him. And if we're calling a spade, the results have actually been better for Louth than they were for Mickey Hart's Louth. I mean, they put up a better fight in the Leinster final against Dublin. They haven't suffered any hidings this year. The Kerry game was definitely like not a great performance, but like, look, they were already through in second place pretty much out of that group. And I honestly thought there was a small part of me that expected Cork to win this game, that would go down as a massive missed opportunity for Louth, but they took their chance. And like, that's a massive thing as well, that like, they were served up a winnable game at home that they could make history with, and they took the chance.
Yeah, massively. I was, as I said, I was kind of double screening today and yesterday, and I had Louth Cork on my phone. I was watching the Táilteann Cup on the telly, and I just happened to look, and Samuel Roy was taking free. I think he'd missed a few. This would maybe have been just before half time, and he just pinged it over. It was a kind of a difficult angle off his right boot, but he pinged it over, and you just got a sense that Louth were really humming today. Like Cork, I could not understand their tactics. It was, and I would be a defender of teams using like blanket defenses or whatever strategy. You cut your cloth to suit your measure. I watch whatever team thinks they're, things works best for them. I don't complain. Like, if that's what you think will win, then that's what you think will win. But it was just so laboured and so ponderous and just stretching the ball out wide, but then nobody coming through the middle when there was space kind of opening up, and you were seeing the gaps. Now, it's obviously easy to say when you're watching on television, but there was just no, like, fair enough, pass the ball over and back, but you need to have somebody to kind of go and then make use of the space and go through. And they weren't doing that. And they kind of nearly invited Louth to put the pressure on them. And when Louth did, they looked very unsure on the ball. Like, Brian O'Driscoll got the ball at one stage out towards the side, and I was sure he was going to get pulled for over carrying, because he drew two lads in on top of him. He somehow managed to wiggle away, but that's what they were nearly doing. Like, Louth were trying to maybe tease them out and see, right, will we sit back and let them keep going until they make a mistake, or will we push up on them? And when they did, Cork couldn't get past them. And twice towards the end of the game, they got bottled up in the far corner. And then the last attack, that's where they ended up, and that's where they lost the ball, and that's when Laois got the kick out, and that was the end of the game. They just couldn't create their own space. Now, I know they got through for a goal chance, and it was a good save, but they just weren't creating enough opportunities. They had a few kind of strange, bad wides as well. Just weren't as focused, or weren't as I don't know, weren't as tuned in as Louth. Louth were really, like, when they got opportunities, they went for it. Like, even the foul for the free at the end, he made the most of it, like, to make sure that they got a free. But that's the cuteness, and that's and Ger Brennan is a Dublin footballer, and I'm sure he's brought a lot of that to the team. And they do seem, you can definitely tell that there is definitely a good connection there between him and the team, and the supporters as well. Like, that was actually a far better venue for these games than Croke Park.
Absolutely.
Like I know the Táilteann Cup, and I can see the logic of it, because it's a day up in Croke Park for a lot of these counties. Not to patronise, but I can see why they're doing it. But the atmosphere then suffers for it, because you're playing at in almost an empty, an empty venue, that everybody is in the one stand. Whereas today with the Louth Cork game, like every inch was covered with a fan of some description, be it Cork or Louth, and the Louth support was just so you could really hear the voices behind their team. They definitely, like, they were so composed. They really saw that game out. Now the Cork goal they conceded in the first half, they might be a little bit disappointed with how, they kind of just, it was a small bit sloppy, but when the game was tight towards the end, they were the ones who held it out. And they managed the clock very well towards the end.
Yeah, they certainly did. We have a comment in there from Matthew. He says there was one stage in the second half where Cork held the ball for 4 minutes, but then dropped the ball short. Confidence drainers. Completely agree with Sinead. Even the goal we got came with surprise. And that's, of course, the goal where O'Mahony flicked it over the Louth goalkeeper into the net. And look, I've said this kind of since the start. I think Cork have a higher ceiling of the level that they're able to get to and the quality that they would be able to play at. And you can't tell me that that's not the case when they've beaten Donegal in the same season that now that they've gone out in this game. And I just look at it, since the start of the year, I felt like Cork almost have, this is just my personal opinion, I feel like Cork sometimes have a one-size-fits-all approach to games where they're just like, okay, well, if we beat Donegal by sitting off, we're going to pick the same team against Louth. And if Louth sit off them, they don't really know how to be the aggressors. They don't really know how to take teams apart the same way that, like, you look at the top teams, like you look at, your Dublins, your Kerrys, that you want to go defensive against them, no problem, but they're also capable of putting up a wall in front of you. Like Dublin definitely are capable of doing that, but they're also capable of unlocking the wall that a team puts up in front of them. And I just felt in this game, when, as you were saying, that like nobody was going through the middle. They were going wide, but nobody was going through the middle. And just, I don't feel like they fully, when you see players like Blake Murphy, for example, who like was such a talent at under 20 level and really, really owned that centre forward position for that under 20 side. And I really expected him to be like completely moved into the Cork team as quick as possible. And he's a real creator. Like, he's the type of guy who could unlock a defence. That game was crying out for him, yet he left the panel because of a lack of game time, a lack of minutes. And you can't argue with that. If you're not getting your minutes for that much commitment, I don't blame any player for stepping away. But God, they really could have done with some creators in this game.
Yeah, well, the big thing for me was just the lack of, like, that was clearly their plan, was to play across and draw Louth out and then try and pick for space. But they were spending so much time in their own half. It was really strange. Like, they were just hand passing the ball over and back and then kind of nearly pushing themselves back rather than trying to even like move forward even slightly. It was very, as I said, I don't complain about defensive systems, but it was hard. It was hard to watch, especially with that sequence that Matthew referred to, that 3-4 minutes where they held the ball, to have nothing at the end of it that's a killer. Because if you're going to like retaining possession for that long is quite good at this level, because a team, you would expect a team to steal it off you. Whereas Louth, I don't think they really put in much of a tackle before maybe the final shot. But if you're going to do that, you have to get your shooters into position. You have to
make sure it finishes with a Brian Hurley.
There's no point having a start if you don't have an end point to it. Like, this is where is this going to end? That we'll have a shooter that's going to go for a shot from a shootable position. That's where they seem to just, they didn't seem to know themselves what way they were going to do it. And then as soon as Louth would get close to them, as soon as they would push up, they were nearly giving them, they were starting to panic and nearly losing the ball. It was it's not the kind of football you expect from Cork, especially with the way they beat Donegal, the way they played that day, the way they struck them on counter-attacks. Like, you see a player like Ryan McHugh at full stretch, full pace, full sprint, trying to get back to stop a goal, and he can't get back. Like that, I thought, whoa, okay, Cork are really a team to watch this year, because Jim McGuinness, you heard him after the Ulster final, the way he spoke to the team in front of the whole crowd, like he was nearly giving them like a dressing room talk in front of everybody, that like, it doesn't stop here. We don't just celebrate an Ulster title. This is the next step in our season, and I'm setting the challenge for the lads now to go on and surpass that. They did not go into the All-Ireland group stages to lose any of those games, regardless of whether they had to travel to Cork or not. And to get a result like that against a resurgent Donegal team that's on this wave under, the second coming of Jim McGuinness, that was a massive, massive result for them to get. But it seemed, I don't know, kind of nearly in hindsight now, it seems like didn't build on it. Like, I know it was a long journey for them to go and play Louth this weekend, but that was a nice venue there today. There was a good opportunity to play good football and to play fast football. And like that, if you're dragging the ball over and back and you can't, if someone can't, when they get it, take the initiative to go through, you're not, you're giving Louth oxygen. You're giving them a chance to stay in the game, and they didn't play like that. When they got the ball, they moved quickly. And especially when Cork had committed so many players forward, Louth were really able to punish them.
Yeah, no, definitely. And like, I want to finish off that segment by giving massive credit to Louth, like just the season that they've had, the way that it started to where it is now. Like Mickey Hart leaving them in the lurch. They identified Ger Brennan. Ger Brennan, in his first senior inter-county manager job, like he's helped out in coaching and everything like that, but this is a whole other ball game. He's the figurehead, and he's done absolutely brilliant. And Louth have done absolutely brilliant, and they've definitely proved a lot of doubters wrong. A lot of people who thought that they would just get relegated straight back down to Division 3 now that Mickey's gone. They've definitely shown that they are legit and they are here to stay, and they're into the All-Ireland Quarter Finals. And this will have a ripple effect for Louth Gaelic football. You look at the end with all the fans rushing in, like there definitely is a bit of GAA euphoria sweeping across the wee county right now. We're going to move to the next game that was a bit of a shock. I didn't see this one coming. I thought Tyrone would win, especially in Healy Park, but Roscommon went away to Healy Park and beat Tyrone by 14 points to 12. Tyrone only led once in this game. Sean O'Donnell pointed in the first minute. Roscommon got the lead very quickly and dominated the first half. Dara Craig, Downey Smith, Dermot Murtagh, Connor Cox to the fore. They led 9-3 at halftime. The closest Tyrone got after that was back to 1 point. They roared back into the second half. Michael McKernan's point in the 64th minute made it a 1 point game, but Dara Craig hit what proved to be the insurance point. 14-12 to Roscommon. Tyrone are out.
Yeah, that was another game that I got caught with the double screen, and there was different games on, so I only kind of came into watching it in the second half. But I saw like halftime, Roscommon were 6 points up. That was not on the cards in my mind, and I was working. And when it was coming to the time, I was like, okay, Roscommon, I think we're going to win this. How do I phrase this? Is this a shock, or am I not giving Roscommon enough credit? Because they're kind of a county that, no matter how many times they win a Connacht title, they're never considered front runners for the Connacht title. It's always a 2-horse race between Galway and Mayo in the eyes of so many. And I remember I did an interview with Colin Craig about that, and I remember asking, like, why don't people give you more credit? And he was like, it's because we haven't, we're not getting to All-Ireland finals, we're not getting to All-Ireland semi-finals. Until we have that, we're not going to be anything in the eyes of the public. So that's, like, for Scott to have that introspection is actually quite refreshing, because it would be very easy for him to say, oh, well, we're going to prove you all wrong, or siege mentality, and well, we know how great the Rossies are. So when I was trying to put it up, trying to capture it, I was like, is this, I think I just said like Roscommon stunned Tyrone, and I think that probably is, like, Tyrone definitely thought they were going to win that game.
And well, especially in the first half, Tyrone definitely looked like they didn't know what was going on. Like,
yeah, but going into it, I think that was a game that they thought like they could, because they've had definitely an image problem. Like, they have not had the public support that maybe they've had in the past. They have been yet to get going. Maybe this was an opportunity for them to, right, we're in an All-Ireland quarter final now. You mightn't have thought much of us before this, but we're back at this point. And, that's where, like what I was mentioning about Derry before, if Tyrone get to a stage like that, you start to pay a bit more attention to them, because getting to the bright lights of the business end of the season might bring the likes of Dara Canavan, might bring the likes of Darren McCurry. It might really kind of push them on. But as I was watching it in the second half, Roscommon were definitely under pressure. Like Tyrone were starting to play like a team that couldn't lose. Like they were really, really going for it, and did bring it back to a point. Michael McKernan's shot was actually a pretty good score, but again, like they were kind of a small bit rushed in their play towards the end when they really knew they were up against the clock. And that Dara Craig point, the way he swung it over with his left boot, he's been a massive breakthrough player for Roscommon since he's come in. Like Diarmuid Murtagh, always so dependable for them. Donny Smith's been excellent. Like Enda Smith has been just a Trojan for them. Yeah. And again, at the weekend, like that is a massive result for them to get. And I think probably my favourite quote of the weekend is Davy Burke, the one that has been resurrected, that like, you know, judge us in the championship. Like that is a huge result. It's probably their biggest result.
I think honestly, if you're not talking Connacht finals, like I think that's one of the biggest results for Roscommon in the last decade. Because it's genuinely like that's the first time now that they've beaten someone outside of Connacht that has made me go, wow, wasn't expecting that. Like they always flattered to deceive. And like a perfect example is the last 2 years. They've lost 2 very, very winnable prelim quarterfinals. Yeah. You lost to Clare and you lost to Cork. Like they were 2 games that you should have won. If you're talking about who had the better team, Roscommon had the better team. This time, I think player for player, Tyrone have a better team. But they went away and beat them. That deserves huge credit. I think that's a result that definitely legitimizes their push. Now, I don't think that they're going to win the All-Ireland, but it's definitely the highlight of their year.
Yeah, I'm looking at the teams here they could get in the draw. So Armagh, Roscommon, Kerry, like they're 3 teams like that. There's nobody there that they will feel like we could stay a bit longer in this championship. That they're all really, really tough. Really tough.
Yeah, no, they could play Donegal, Armagh, and Kerry. I think they'd want to stay. I think they'd want Armagh. If I'm being honest, like out of those 3, who's the most inconsistent? It is Armagh. Armagh would potentially make a meal out of them. Yeah. And when you see that Galway have gone toe-to-toe with Armagh over and over and over again, there is a potential blueprint for Roscommon to win that game.
Yeah.
I still would make Armagh favourites.
I mean, it would still be difficult for you to see. See, again, now we're not giving them credit. Like, they're after beating Tyrone, and yet it still feels like they haven't done enough to win the support of the public. And it's very, like, it's an unfair existence for a team like Roscommon, because it just feels like they can't do enough to get people on side. Like, they do really well. They're a really good league team. They've been relegated this year, but have they've some really, really good players. Like we mentioned, Dara Craig, I think he got 4 points. Diarmuid Murtagh 4 points. Donny Smith, I think, was he 4 points as well. I think there was some inconsistencies in some of the match reports I saw, and Connor Cox has been a massive discovery for them as well. Enda Smith, they have brilliant players, and to get to this point is, regardless of how it goes against whichever team they get in the draw, that's a huge way to end their season. To go up to Healy Park and do that, it would have been a great game if it had more of a billing on television. But I don't think anybody saw this result going into it. It's always nice to say those things kind of after the fact. And it was, I think that's their first championship victory ever over Tyrone as well. Like, they're all huge pluses for the county to get. And they've had a team, a club team reach an All-Ireland final this year, with Bridget's getting back to the Bridgets of old, getting to All-Ireland finals in the past. That's a good season for Roscommon, whatever way it goes after this.
Yeah, I do completely agree with the Carl Craig thing that you were saying, that it's when teams haven't gone to the very top that you're thinking, everything like that. That I picked out Armagh because out of Armagh, Kerry and Donegal, Armagh also have yet to break through that ultimate glass ceiling recently. Like, Armagh haven't really gone through under McGeeney in a long time. Like, they haven't been to an All-Ireland semi-final since 2005, I believe it is. So, like, Armagh have been made to wait a while as well. And I feel like with Donegal and Kerry, given that they are very recently successful, and I know that Donegal is, 12 years ago now that they won the All-Ireland, which is nuts, but it's the fact that McGuinness is back and it feels like the second coming that you would give them more of a shot. But yeah, Roscommon, absolutely well done, fair play. Now, this game wasn't a shock. Galway getting what was a relatively straightforward win over Monaghan in Pearse Stadium, 14 points to 11. The last 2 points were hit by Conor McManus. Now, obviously, post-match, it was absolutely shot around the McManus was gone. I'm going to wait until we hear it from the man himself before I talk about it. Obviously, if he is to go, he's one of the greatest footballers I've ever seen and one of my favourite players to watch. He's the type of player you pay in to watch. But for Monaghan in this game, all in all, it was a very bad year for Monaghan. Like, you're talking about, you want to call it as you see it, like they got relegated from Division 1 with 1 win out of 7 games. They went out in the first round of Ulster. They got annihilated by Kerry. Very lucky to draw to Louth, beat Meath, and now out to Galway. A definite year of regression.
Yeah, I think the last time I spoke with you on the podcast, we mentioned Monaghan and how they've been kind of the Great Escape team in Division 1 and just about staying up there. And yeah, their time kind of ran out on them. The pictures of Conor McManus kind of summed it up. And even the way he was being retired before he actually got a chance to speak about it and had to basically say, like, no, I haven't made any decision yet, and I don't, look, I know time's against me or whatever, but it just
I don't like that, to be honest, man.
Yeah.
I really don't like that. Let the man make his decision.
I think I just made it more so in the fact it just summed up the bleakness kind of around Monaghan at the moment. Yeah, like I watched that game through kind of strained eyes again. It was another kind of Louth Cork. Like, I don't know what kind of fog was in Pearse Stadium. It kind of looked like a February day more than a day in June. Difficult kind of game to watch. Very kind of ponderous play. Yeah, Galway won, and they'll be happy that it was a scrap. That's the way I would sum up that game. But if to switch it over to Galway, like, they're still struggling small bit with injuries. Like, Shane Walsh is just not right. Anytime we've seen him play, he's done well, which is quite remarkable, seeing as he's had such inconsistent time on the field. But I think Portjoy said he pulled up with a hamstring issue. So we didn't really get to see much of him. Now, the plus sides for them was Damien Comer coming back, but he's also had problems with injuries this year too. And the other big plus is Paul Conroy is playing the best football of his life, I'd say. Another guy, I think he's 17 years on the panel, would have actually crossed over a small bit with Porrick Joyce. His first year was, I think, 2008 when they played Kerry in Croke Park. It was a really, really wet day. Galway actually were at one point looking like they might push on. Now, there was an inevitable kind of feeling about that Kerry will come back and win, but that just shows you how long he's been knocking around. He's broken both his legs, and he kicked 3 points there against Monaghan. He's been kicking points throughout the year. He's been phenomenal. John Maher has been another big plus for them as well. And he's had a small bit of problem with injury this year too, but the injury issue, they've
seen Darcy and Sean Mulcairn there last week injured.
Yeah,
like, Joyce must be sitting there with a list like that literally just drops to the floor of players that are unavailable. I said that, like it or not, Galway have had to develop a really deep squad because they've had to use players that Joyce probably wouldn't have had on his radar as being on the starting team at the beginning of the year.
I think there was 21 players at one stage that was injured. I don't know if it was that all at one time or that was just a cumulative effect, because they were kind of coming and going at different times. And like, even Kieran Malloy is only back from an ACL injury. Now, he hasn't really been, he was in there in the league, was kind of, not maybe keeping his place, but that's a very serious injury to have to come back from. So that's another player that's been kind of involved in that group that's been affected. I don't know if I've ever seen that many injuries in one squad. It's a huge headache for Porrick Joyce to have to be dealing with going into a quarter final. But go back to Monaghan, yeah, it's just been a tough road for them. I don't know what will happen with them next. Now it's even with Vinnie Corey, what he'll do next, what his decisions will be for the future. That was it was just, you kind of knew Galway were going to win it, but it wasn't an absorbing game like some of the other ones we saw this weekend. It was tough. It was tough to watch. It was tough football. It wasn't like if Monaghan had gotten through, I certainly wouldn't have seen them. That was not a team now that I would say would get a spark from getting through to the Ireland, because it was just that kind of game. It was just sluggish, and they did look a bit sluggish. And Rory Beggan being gone for as long as he was over in the over with the NFL, trying to get an opportunity out there, and like an amazing opportunity for him as an individual player. And obviously, if you've got a chance like that, he obviously, he's a fan of the sport. He saw an opening that maybe could lead to a chance out there. He's obviously going to go. Probably did cause a bit of disruption for Monaghan, because then he was back, and then there was stories that like, oh, he might still have a chance, he might still get a deal with a team. Maybe not and he kind of went straight back into the team when he came back as well. Yeah. Just again, just kind of fractured for them, disruptions, getting relegated, and just not picking up the pace. And again, back to Conor McManus. He's, even last year, he's been kind of a bench player, and maybe he was okay with that. Maybe he, understood, the change in his role, but, it's not, maybe I think he's a player. If you want to play him, you want to play him kind of from the front. I don't think he's a finisher type of player. I think that kind of just sums up where they're at the moment.
Yeah, no, I do agree with you. I think just when you have a golden crop like Monaghan had, when you have your McManus and your Hughes brothers and Vinnie Corey and the Wiley brothers and Carl O'Connell and Rory Beggan, they had such a good crop for such a small county in terms of the numbers that they have. And yeah, just what happens then is when one or two of those players drop off, it's just like, one of those two players, it's impossible to replace them. It's like Dublin can keep, bringing in new guys because there's so many new players to pick from, whereas Monaghan have to get the best out of everyone. And when a player like McManus, if he does step away, or when a player like Darren Hughes gets injured, it's so hard to replace them. We have a couple of comments in here from Jack. Jack says, Gary, agree, Dubs favourites, but not certain win. Sleeping on Kerry, I fancy them though. Safe bet with the Dubs, but Kerry always there or thereabouts. They look better this year, but we will find out more at the weekend about their style of play. Then he says Cork too conservative. Yeah, Cork were too conservative in the game against Louth, simply put. So yeah, Galway are through to the quarterfinals. And just very briefly, we'll touch on that. So Dublin can get either Derry or Galway. Donegal can get anyone of Derry, Louth, Roscommon and Galway. Armagh can get Louth or Roscommon, and Kerry can get Derry, Roscommon and Galway. So immediately, and I'm sorry to bash Roscommon, but immediately if I'm Armagh, I'm very happy with who they can get. They're staying away from Derry. They're staying away. Derry, obviously, I know that they beat them, but now Derry might have their mojo back. They're staying away from Derry and they're staying away from Galway. And if they haven't made it to an All-Ireland Semi Finals since 2005, they could well put that to right.
Yeah. I mean, not that they could, but they'll be happy they're avoiding Dublin and Kerry as well.
Yeah.
They're two teams they would like to get. Now, I say that kind of conservatively because they've both got, Louth and Roscommon both have gotten a lot of momentum from their results this weekend. And you mentioned before about Armagh's inconsistencies, and if they go to a penalty shootout, Armagh have a terrible history with them, so that might colour their views more for the semi-final. They certainly won't want to have to go down that road again. But they look very good against Derry, and they're very goal hungry. I like the way they're playing. I like the way Rian O'Neill is playing. I think they're in pretty good nick. They have that extra week's rest. That's the whole, that is the whole initiative of winning out your group. They've beaten, not that they, again, I know they wouldn't play them, but beating Galway 2 years in a row in the same situation, trying to top your group, that's going to give them a lot of positives as well going into that game. They'll be very happy, regardless of who they get in the draw, that they're in a good place, that they're playing well, and they've got a lot of momentum behind them as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I would look at the other games and I think, like, for Dublin, like, if Dublin actually, realistically, Dublin have got a hard draw guaranteed. Like, Derry and Galway will both be difficult games for Dublin, no question about it. So the draw definitely is very, very interesting, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it does actually play out. We'll put the Táilteann Cup semi-finals on next on the agenda. So we have Down winning this one 120 to 215 after extra time in Croke Park. Sligo in 5 minutes went from looking like they might have struck what would have been the crucial score as Canis Mulligan palmed home their second goal. And then 5 minutes later, Nathan Mullen was shown a straight red card. Down had them on the ropes. Sligo managed bravely and valiantly to hold on and get extra time, but just in extra time it proved to be a little bit too much in terms of like having a man down. And look, they were absolutely a credit to themselves that they fought to the bitter end. And the amount of players, particularly watching on the screen, Darragh Cummins must have pulled his hamstring about 7 times. And yet he just never gave up, kept going to the bitter end. They've had a brilliant year, Sligo. And I think McEntee should be really happy with how they've done, because, you've got players like Canis Mulligan and everything like that coming into the team from your under-20 side. The future's bright for Sligo, but for now, Down or into the Táilteann Cup final.
Yeah, fantastic game. I know a lot of people were complaining that the hurling quarter finals were on yesterday and that the Táilteann Cup semi finals were getting the red carpet treatment in Croke Park on Sunday, but that was a good game, and it was a game worth having on TVs. Another game of the weekend that went to extra time and would have gone to penalties had Down not gotten that penalty, which pretty much killed the game. Like you talked about, the cramp, guys pulling up. It was a really tough game, and in that heat, even you saw the birds flying into Croke Park, but normally they're repelled by the hawks, and yet because the game was going on so long, it was a mammoth game. You had so much extra time, obviously, as well, because of the awful injury to Oisin Savage. Obviously, I saw the replay of it. I think Mullen did go for the ball, but obviously with the nature of the injury, maybe that was what influenced the referee to send him off. I definitely don't think he intended to put him in the condition that he had ended up having to be stretchered off the way he was. I think it kind of was more of a precaution, although I think after the game, Laverty wasn't able to kind of give an immediate word on his condition. So that was obviously another factor as well. And it was, it just came down to that penalty, really. That was the swinging of the game. If you score 2 goals against Down, you kind of think you are going to win. I think, not being able to have Pat Spillane on earlier in the game, I think Sligo would have liked to have been able to bring him on earlier. He had a bit of an injury, and he did make an impact when he did come on. But it was a credit to them that they managed to pull out the result and get back to a Táilteann Cup final. And they're back playing against Laois, who they beat well in the semi-final last year. And I think the big thing for me in the aftermath was that this really legitimized the competition. It really showed that teams want to win it, that it's not, we're not seeing different teams every year just maybe winning it and then, getting it out of the way just to get up to the Sam Maguire competition. If they don't win it, they're trying to win it again next year. The fact that we're seeing a small bit of a rivalry, we're seeing a small bit of, there's an eagerness there in teams to actually go and win it if they don't win it the first time. That was a big plus for me.
It just sums it up, man. You look at the celebrations of Darragh Cummins when he got the point right at the death, which looked like it might get Sligo over the line, and the roar that he let out when he put that over. And then you look at Ryan McAvoy's celebration immediately after when he hit the equaliser. He's jumping up and punching the air. Like, don't tell me that those lads aren't desperate to win the competition, especially when Down lost it last year. Like, they've they've come with a vengeance, and the fact that they're playing Laois in the final, everybody will tip them to win. They're gonna have to keep their head screwed on.
Yeah, and especially because they beat them so well in last year's semi-final, so that will mean that Laois will certainly be coming for revenge this year, and that's a brilliant sign of the competition, because there was the big opposition to it, because the reason it took so many years for it to be implemented was that people said, well, it won't be taken seriously, it won't get the media attention, teams won't want to play it, everybody wants to play in the Sam Maguire, let teams figure out how to become competitive in the Sam Maguire by letting them stay in that competition. Don't bring in the second tier.
I always hated that argument, like, oh, let teams get their ass whooped every year.
Yeah, but that was it. That was what teams wanted, or that seemed to be what teams wanted. I remember the GPA ran a survey among players, like, what do you want? And there was like a 70% vote against bringing in a second tier, which, like, they don't want it. They did not want a second competition. But then it did get brought in, and there was still a lot of, you could see on Twitter, there were a lot of people who did not like this competition coming in. But then the first year, you could see, there was definitely support for it. I think there was a dedicated effort kind of on all sides to not just play it and take it seriously, but to kind of cover it in the media. And that was kind of like this week when I saw so many people complaining that it was on TV and it was, in Croke Park. Now, again, I do think it probably would have been served better in a smaller venue for atmosphere, but I get why they played it in Croke Park for the counties themselves, to have a day in Croke Park and to be able to have some game this year where they did get to play in Croke Park too. But that's the point. We're trying to promote this competition. We're trying to sell it. We're trying to, show teams that, okay, like, yeah, you want to be in the Sam Maguire, but the Táilteann Cup is a competition worth winning. You are guaranteed Sam Maguire competition or football next year if you win it. That's the big prize. Yeah. If you take it seriously, if you really keep your players, obviously you're going to lose. You are going to have some drainage. There's going to be lads who go off to America. You can't stop that. That's going to happen to every county. Like we saw it even with Galway hurlers, they lost a lot of players after they got knocked out. Players go off to America for the summer. That's just how it goes. But if you can try and legitimize the competition and sell it to teams and make it a competition worth winning, well, that's what days like today are for. That's why it was on TV. You saw how hard they fought in that down Sligo game. Lads were pulling up, lads were wincing, lads were in pain trying to win that dirty ball to try and win it out. And when Down won it in the end, it was there was a serious joy there that they're back. They are trying to right the wrongs of last year and win it out. And that's the whole point of the competition summed up.
Yeah, no, well said. It definitely is the case that Down have come with a vengeance for the Táilteann Cup, and waiting for them in the final will be a familiar foe, as you were saying. Laois getting back to the final where they get a shot at revenge, and in my opinion, redemption as well, because that game last year against Down was a dark day for Laois football, like conceding 8 goals in Croke Park, like you wouldn't have seen that. But Antrim, they put Antrim away with 3 goals of their own, 2 from Brian Byrne. And then, like, those were the key ones. And his late goal in the 67th minute was the final nail in Antrim's coffin. That was the end of their challenge. 3-12 to Laois, 1-13 to Antrim. Laois are in the Táilteann Cup final.
Yeah, and that's, Laois have been trucking along really well this year. Got promoted out of Division 4 champions. Kind of just went about their business to get out of the bottom division. Justin McNulty seems to be making a big splash there and seems to be doing really well with the team. As far as entertainment or the absorbing factor, it wasn't the same as the other semi-final. They just went up and did their job to get back to the final. And yeah, like you said, redemption is going to be a big thought on their mind. Like, I don't know when's the last time I saw a team concede 8 goals in any championship game, much less to do it in Croke Park. So they'll be sore after that, and they have a big chance now to get a scalp on Down. They will need their rest now after a big game like that. I'm sure a lot of soreness, a lot of bruises picked up. I don't know what the condition will be for Oisín Savage and whether he'll be able to be considered for that game, but that would be huge competition for them. And again, you see, because they're in Division 3, this is their way to get into playing in Sam Maguire. Now, I don't know if like how they would fare in Sam Maguire next year, but that's not a reason not to go for it. That's not a reason not to win it. You're in a final now. You're playing against a team like Down would consider themselves pretty competitive against most of the teams in Sam Maguire. So if they can measure up to Down, you should be happy enough to take that step up. And that's the aim now for them going into the final. They look pretty good today in Croke Park, look pretty comfortable. They've definitely got, they'll have a lot more energy conserved for that game. So that'll be something that they'll be honing in on.
Yeah, no, for sure. To run through the game, so it was Brian Byrne's 27th minute goal in the first half that was the difference at halftime. Laois led 1-7 to 7 points at the break. In the third quarter, Antrim dominated. Laois didn't score while Antrim hit 1-3. The goal coming from Patrick McAleer in the 44th minute and the points from Dominic McInhill, Colin McLarnon and Patrick McBride. Laois hit big from the 52nd to the 60th minute as they hit 1-3 without reply, with the goal coming from Kevin Swain in the 53rd minute. And then Brian Byrne's second goal in the 67th minute ultimately killed off the challenge. And yeah, for anyone saying that the game shouldn't have been played in Croker and everything like that, they should have been, because that's what the games are brought in for. It was to give credit and to give respect to the players who don't always get their day in the sun. And how many great footballers have we seen from smaller counties that have never even played a match in Croke Park because of the way that the championship structure was set up. So the fact that you get a guaranteed game in Croke Park on RTE for your family to watch, and then you're guaranteed to be in the Sam Maguire if you win the competition, and you get national silverware, that's the carrot on the stick for all the teams, and it gets the competition the legitimacy that it definitely wants. So we're done with the Táilteann Cup. We'll run through quickly the LGFA senior games. We had 2 games that were close. We'll go talk about them. And then we had 2 games that were not close at all. This game is the most consequential. Definitely was the closest. To Meath, 2-15, Tipperary, 2-12. So Meath were comfortable in this game. They were 2-14 to 1 goal and 8 points ahead in the 50th minute. Tipperary reeled them back in. Ashton Maloney hit 4 points, and then Tipperary got a goal from Nasatowi in the 58th minute. So Meath were made to sweat for this, but it was ultimately their full forward line that was the difference. Emma Duggan hit 6 points. Marion Farrell hit 1-3. Maeve Byrne hit 1-2 for a combined 2 goals and 11 points. So their full forward line was the difference. They get through the group, but to be honest, regarding Meath, having seen how Dublin wiped the floor with them, I don't see an All-Ireland in them this year.
Yeah, it is. It's difficult for me. They're kind of still dealing with that kind of hangover of being, they're kind of been slipping away from that All-Ireland contention title ever since their breakthrough, that massive burst of winning back to back. It was incredible the way they went straight from intermediate to conquer in senior. It was incredible. And Emma Duggan, you mentioned her there, she was a big part of that. But you got that sense after they won the second one. I remember Eamon Murray being like, it was kind of odd the way he spoke afterwards. He was like, we're not going to win 3 in a row. Like he was saying it almost straight after the game had finished, because the players that were going to,
and he stepped away as well. It felt like he was stepping out right before the plane nosedived. It was like the pilot was jumping off of his stop.
Definitely was. But if you go back to the Kerry game, I think it was last year, they had Vicky Wall, they had, I think, Orla Lally even that day as well. I don't know, it seems a small bit premature of him to just leave, because you see, the Dublin team have had players go to the AFLW, but Mick Bohan has just said, okay, that's what can we do? You just have to get on with it. Now they probably have depth that maybe Meath don't, but he just kind of dealt with it, whereas Eamon it just seems like he just kind of conceded to it before he had a real lay of the land, because sometimes you just don't know what availability you will have with the players. Now maybe he just didn't want to take that chance and thought, look, this is the legacy, I want to step out now before it can get any worse under my watch. I don't want to see them fall away and not be able to bring them back. And then that's when
Jose Mourinho with Inter Milan to win the treble.
And so he did leave, and they did start to dip after that. And a few years ago you wouldn't expect them to just win by 3 points against Tipperary. Although, Ashley Maloney, she's a brilliant footballer. Tipperary are a strong ladies football county.
Drew with Armagh, like.
Yeah, they're always thereabouts. They're a really strong county with good tradition. But yeah, I mean, you mentioned Dublin, like they're just like shark's teeth. They're just a relentlessnness about them. They're always there and they're always coming. Watching them in, last year, they're just the ferociousness of them, the speed of them. Even their football has just come on so much. Like their skill set has gone through the roof. It is it's hard to see anybody kind of clipping them this year.
Yeah, no, I do agree. I think when you look at how Dublin mopped the floor with Meath and how you look at Kerry getting caught by Donegal, like up in the first game of the group, especially when you compare it with the fact that Donegal are now no longer in the competition after Waterford beat them. Waterford beat them 110 to 7 points in Walsh Park. These two were the competitive, consequential games. Eve Power hit an early goal in the 6th minute. Waterford pulled off a massive win. Emma Fitzgerald also contributed massively with 6 points. But for Donegal, given that they drew with Kerry and then to go out of the group anyway, must be very disappointing.
Yeah, and again, like, I mean, both Waterford and Donegal are strong ladies football counties, again, with lots of tradition and lots of history behind both teams. Again, yeah, like maybe they just don't have the depth of a team like Dublin. It's just hard to sustain it when you're not when you're not winning All Irelands, when you're not. That's it with ladies football. You kind of need that to keep teams together, to keep squads together. And when that's not coming, and they don't have the media coverage, they don't have the status that the men's team have, it's harder to keep players involved because there's so much.
I looked through it and like the players are missing. Like no Niamh McLaughlin, no Geraldine McLaughlin, no Yvonne Bonner. Like they'd walk back into the team.
Yeah, certainly. And when you've lost players like that, like Geraldine McLaughlin is probably one of the best players of all time, and to not have her in your team is a huge loss. Like few teams will be able to recover from that. So yeah, when you're coming up against a team like Waterford that are, again, like they're a strong team, they're always there, thereabouts. They're not going to be easy bet or easy to compete with. It's hard to get by without players like that. You mentioned Yvonne Bonner, brilliant footballer who had gone off to play in the AFLW, massive talent. It's most teams wouldn't be able to survive without players like that.
Yeah, no, she was too much of a loss. And fair play to Waterford. The goal from Eve Power ultimately kicked them on, as well as the 6 points from Emma Fitzgerald. They're into the quarterfinals. These two games, we grouped them together because it's impossible to analyse. They were just absolute beatdowns. Galway 7-22. Laois 1-5 at Duggan Park. And then Kildare 9 points. Dublin 4-19 at Mangard Park. For Galway, the big shouts, Olivia Divley hit 2 goals and 9 points. Alva Davern hit 2 goals and 1 point. And then in the Dublin game, Carla Rowe hit 3 goals and 6 points. Like, just 2 beatdowns, kind of hard to analyse them.
Yeah, like for Kildare to be coming up from intermediate, like that's a big ask of them against Dublin. They're developing, I don't mean to patronize, but they are a team that's, this isn't the year for them. They're trying to build. They're trying to keep players is probably going to be a challenge for them, because like, who wants to lose by that much against a team like Dublin? A lot of teams have had regressions on the back of beatings from Dublin. And you mentioned, Carla Rowe, such longevity in the Dublin team. Like, she remembers the All-Irelands when they were losing to Cork and just could not get over the line. And she's been a huge a core part of the Dublin team that has been dominating the scene since then, and has come through that Meath spell as well. She's just a freak athlete, a freak footballer, brilliant, consistent serving for them. You mentioned Olivia Divley there, huge player for Galway. Like, Galway were not that long ago. Galway were in an All-Ireland final. They're brilliant team. Again, massive history behind them. It's hard to kind of make sense of those kind of score lines and to kind of get a proper look at them and proper kind of analysis of them. Like they're big. Look, you play what's in front of you, and when you get a player like Olivia Dibley getting in for scores like that, it's still a worthwhile day out. But yeah, the bigger tests are ahead.
For sure, the bigger tests are ahead, and like Laois and Kildare. Laois have definitely looked out of their depth, to be honest. And Kildare, it just feels like it's been a year too soon for them almost to play against the Dublins. It's almost like they needed more time to develop. We're going to briefly touch on the hurling quarterfinals, and then we will wrap it up. So, moving to the one that was more competitive, Dublin against Cork. And I have to be honest, I feared for this game, genuinely feared for this game. When I seen what Cork had done to Tipperary, and when I seen what Kilkenny did to us, I thought Cork, Semple Stadium, trouble. But I have to say, I'm proud of the lads. No matter what, we hung in that game. Like, there were stages where Cork led by 9 points. Like, early in the second half, Cork hit the first 4 points off the restart, led 19 points to 10. I was thinking that they were going to pull away and leave us for dust. But Sean Curry was brilliant. Conor Burke was brilliant. Chris Crummey, Owen O'Donnell. We hung in the game. And as it was coming down to the last few minutes, I kind of knew that we weren't going to win. But I feel like we bloodied Cork's nose a little bit. Like, Cork came through. Yes, they win. They're into the semi-final. But they don't win glamour points. Like, they didn't do it in style.
Yeah. I think it's a game that both teams would be kind of disappointed in, because I think there was a glimmer of a chance. Now, they'd have to have taken every chance that they got, but Dublin could maybe have snuck it yesterday. Like you said, coming into the end, yeah, you did feel like Cork were going to win it. But the stages in the second half were like that. I thought they were going to pull away. They didn't. Make. I'm open to correction. I don't think they created any goal chances.
Brennan made a brilliant save, but apart from that, there wasn't much.
They weren't. They were. I thought that was a game, yeah, they could open up on Dublin, because just the way they lost the Leinster final was just massacre. I was not expecting that, the way Kilkenny just, annihilated them. And I thought they would be carrying big wounds into the Cork game, and I thought Cork might open them up. And especially since Cork, with the like Alan Connolly's been unbelievable this year. He got a hat-trick against Tipperary. I thought he'd be very hungry for goals against Dublin, but they just didn't pull away. Like, there was a lot of mistakes on Cork's part. I wouldn't be happy, with the Cork performance.
This is what I'm saying. It's not going to be good enough to beat Limerick.
No,
not going to be good enough to beat Limerick.
Definitely not. If that was Limerick, they wouldn't have put.
Would have gotten annihilated.
They got 26 points. They wouldn't have put 26 points up against Limerick playing the way they did on Saturday. And Dublin, again, hung in, kept hanging in, created a couple of goal chances towards the end, but also, kind of wasteful shooting at times, not holding the ball. And then they'd string a few passes together and get a great score. Like, it was coming in fits and starts for them. It was a weird game. They lost by 5 points, but it felt like they lost by 2 points to me. They were so much closer than the scoreboard maybe suggested. And I hate that. I hate when people put it like that. But it did feel like there was, more Dublin breathing down their neck, down Cork's neck more than down.
It was at the end though, because it was like you had Diarmuid O'Dooling take the shot that Patrick Collins saved. Ronan Hayes took a shot that went wide, and you're like, if one of those goes in the net, like, this is very quickly down to a point, 2 points in the difference. And just it's that thing that you're like, if Dublin can get those chances against you, Limerick won't miss them. And on top of that, if Dublin can hold your defence, you will need to score. It's no wonder that Cork scored 3 goals to beat Limerick. That's how much goals you're going to need to score again to beat them in Croke Park, especially because now that Limerick are here, they're going to stick their chests out and we're on the way for 5. Cork are going to need to score 3 goals in the All-Ireland semi-final to stop them. You're not going to outpoint Limerick. And the fact that they didn't score any goals against Dublin, like, Pat Ryan is in a he's got work to do now, because they're going into the semi-final. They are up against the challenge of their lives to stop what, in my opinion, is the greatest hurling team of all time. And like that's what, like, Coleman Long here says as well, they'd have hardly put up 6 points against Limerick playing that brand of hurling. They didn't look the same, but they are true. They did get the job done. I think a lot of credit has to go to Dublin as well for making it difficult. Owen O'Donnell, the job he was doing at fullback was immense. Like, a lot of Dublin players stood up and were huge. Like Sutcliffe again, like, first, he's 30, 33, 34. He's still, playing amazing. A year has come to an end, but I do think that we have made progress. And if we can get players that were missing this year back into the fold, keep Keane O'Sullivan fit, get Rian McBride back maybe, like, there is reasons to be positive there for Dublin. I feel like we just need our own kind of Alan Connolly. We need our own goal threat. To move to the other quarter final, this one wasn't close. Clare 228, Wexford 119, and it was the one that people were expecting to be close. I really thought that Wexford would make Clare go to the well. And in the first half, I felt quite vindicated in that decision, especially when Lee Chin slotted the penalty away. Rory O'Connor got sent off very quickly after that, though. And in the second half, Wexford never got going. Shane O'Donnell's goal in the 41st minute signalled a parting in the ways. And Ian Galvin's second goal for Clare, 53rd minute, that was them kicking on. Then Rogers, O'Donnell, Tony Kelly, all fired over points in what was, in the end, a comfortable win.
Yeah, the Rory O'Connor sending off that was it. I think I knew as nearly as soon as he went off, I thought Clare were going to push on. I know sometimes sending offs can galvanise a team, but you could just see Wexford just lost their shape and weren't able to cope without him. He's a top scoring forward. He'd been doing well. There was an awful lot of over-reliance on Lee Chin at the start of the championship. He had scored like 111 and 212 in the first two games, and there was the support from the other forwards just wasn't there. But then the fact
that he got man of the match in a game where they lost
against Antrim, yeah, which almost seemed kind of cruel to make him do the interview and give him the award. But it just underlined just how good. I think he only got like 11 touches or 12 touches in that game, but every touch was a score. He was absolutely electric, but Wexford were too reliant on him. But then the likes of Conor McDonald got going and Rory O'Connor. They started to, Cathal Dunbar, you're getting more out of the guys around you, which they had to. You can't expect to get far if your only out is Lee Chin. And Rory O'Connor was starting to come into the game. And when they got that goal, when they got that when the penalty, and they had been behind by a bit, they really roared into the game at that stage. And then to lose him, that was the changing of the game. And Clare just took advantage from that. Like the Shane O'Donnell goal, like the way he was able to switch up from a shot to another touch on the stick just to give himself that little extra space to compose himself for the final shot. He's in Hurler of the Year talk. Everybody is saying it. He has been immense this year. He was brilliant last year as well, even the year before. Not playing the league has been huge for him, and he's talked about it earlier this year. Yes, he was injured, but he kind of said that like there's a certain unspoken agreement between himself and Brian Lohan that he can kind of taper back during the league and come in then later in the season, and he's really getting the benefits of it. He's so fresh, he's so sharp, he's a brilliant playmaker, he's winning primary possession, like being marked by the best backs, the best full backs in the country, and he's going to come up, I presume, against Hugh Lauder against Kilkenny the next day. Like that won't, or Mikey Butler, I don't know who they're going to put on him. And they're the best backs in the country, but he's still smoking. He was against Darren Morrissey the first day against Limerick, and he was still catching ball. He's just in electric form at the moment. And if they can get, like, obviously you have to be getting the ball into him. Like, he was quiet enough in the Munster final by his standards. Now, I thought the quality of the ball going into him at times wasn't great. Like, you can't, some of the ball was going into him, you couldn't expect him to catch. But when it does get into him, he has this way of, you probably see him when he's holding the hurl. Most people hold it horizontally. He holds it up like a sword. And I think that actually disorientates people around him, because the hurl is nearly a distraction. I don't know how he can hold it. It must be the lightest hurl in the sport. But he's so wiry. He's so fidgety. He's so hard to get a hold of. Like soap. He is flying it at the moment. And Tony Kelly, that game was exactly what he needed to open up the lungs a bit, because it's, you know, he's kind of the opposite. Like, he's been dealing with injury, and it's been, I think, a bit harder for him to regain his match fitness. And Brian Lohan kind of said as much before the Munster final after they beat Waterford. He scored a goal in that game, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he did, after he came on. And you know, he was asked about Tony and the fact that he hadn't been starting him, and he said, no, he's okay. His injury is off him. It's just match fitness now is the thing for him. And they were obviously trying to build it up for him, but it's hard to build up match fitness when you're in championship. Like, you don't have challenge matches where you can build it up. You probably don't even have that many in-house games, because you have to really, you know, it's a delicate process, I imagine, of training. They're not going too hard because you've got so many games coming. I know Clare had a 3-week break during the Munster Championship, but when you're playing, you have to taper back your training because the games are so tough. And he has been struggling to get into games. Like, he wasn't really in it in the Munster final. I think it was him that William O'Donoghue put the big hit on in the Munster final and really knocked him, you know, and he needed a game where he just got going, where he was just pinging the ball, where he was getting scores, and that will settle him now going into the All-Ireland semi-final. And the big thing for him is, can he perform in the All-Ireland semi-final? Because
he might get Mikey Butler.
He just wasn't there from the last two, and this is now a big stage for him. It's their third time now against Kilkenny. They got beaten badly the first time. They gave them a great game last year, almost caught them at the end. I think it was Peter Duggan who had that savage shot that Owen Murphy saved. It was unbelievable. So if they can bring that again now and keep and get the likes of O'Donnell, get Kelly moving, that will be a big test for them. Now, the way Kilkenny kind of took Dublin apart shows that they're starting to really show their teeth. They have Owen Cody back from injury. He's flying. Owen Murphy had a bit of a knock as well. But yeah, it was kind of hard once Rory O'Connor was gone. Like, you know, Clare could kind of not play at their ease, but you know, you could just see them stretching away in the second half. And then Ian Galvin's goal was like, I think I might have switched to one of the games after that score, because it just seemed so inevitable at that point. So they are like, look, I expected it to be closer. I think Wexford will be disappointed that they did, you know, like, you lose a player, but sometimes you have to deal with that. Sometimes you do lose a player, or you lose, you know, if it could have been Lee Chin that went off with an injury or something like that, that can happen. And having gotten through Leinster the way they did, you know, they hadn't started well, and then to come out with the statement performance against Galway, that was where those other forwards really started to step up, and to get back to the Leinster final. Like, they should have beaten Kilkenny the first day. There was a penalty given that shouldn't have been given. That was a bit of a wild call, I think, in my view.
That was the difference. That was the one where he gave the black card penalty decision, but didn't give a black card.
It was weird. And like, you know, if it was a foul, it was a free. It wasn't a penalty. There was two Wexford players around. I think it was Cody that drew the foul. It was a weird one for me. But they should have won that game. Like, would have had the measure of Kilkenny, beat Galway, you know, seemed to be going pretty well, and you know, will be disappointed that they didn't last a bit longer in the second half and kind of just got picked apart the way they did. But maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm kind of dealing with like sending offs in maybe football terms. You can kind of, you know, spread your defense out a small bit. It's a bit harder in hurling, where you can kind of bypass blankets with a good, well directed shot into your full forward line. But they'd be disappointed that they went out the way they did, but some positives there for them.
Yeah, some positives there this year. I do think all in all it was a decent first year for Rossa there. Probably like, I don't know, a B or something, or a B- or a C+. Like, you did some basics well. you still had the trademark Wexford losing a game that they should never lose, but you still had the trademark Wexford then battering a Galway or Kilkenny. So more or less a straightforward year for Wexford. We have a couple of comments here from Joseph Nash. He says Cork will need 5 goals versus Limerick next. Limerick are really looking forward to playing Cork. Well, Limerick certainly have unfinished business with Cork, no question about it. And he says O'Donnell will not get hurt of the year if Clare do not beat Kilkenny. That is the big one. Yep. So we have the All-Ireland Semi Finals, and I'm gonna say it with this. I said at the beginning of the year that I had a funny feeling that it would be Limerick and Clare against each other in the All-Ireland final, because if you look through the history books, the 5 in a row, it has always been that team's biggest rival waiting for them at the door of history. It was Kerry waiting for Dublin. It was Tipperary waiting for Kilkenny. Mm. Will it be Clare waiting for Limerick? They're on the opposite sides of the draw. So, I mean, you can definitely make a case for it. The Camogie, the 6 game is going to wrap them up together, because it was 6 annihilations. Like, this wasn't a good weekend for Camogie as far as I'm concerned, because it was 6 absolute beatdowns. You have Waterford beating Antrim 3-18 to 1-8. You have Kilkenny beating Derry 4-17 to 7 points. You have Tipperary beating Limerick 7-18 to 6 points. Then in Group 2, you have Wexford beating Down 7-12 to 7 points. Cork beating Dublin 4-22 to 5 points. And Galway beating Clare 3-19 to 7 points. I mean, some of the scores as well that were put up. Beth Carton hit 11 points. Aoife Prendergast and Aoife Doyle combined for 3-9 for Kilkenny. Grace O'Brien and Emer McGrath combined for 6-6 for Tipperary in their game. Amy O'Connor and Katrina Mackey combined for 3-12 against Dublin. Shelley Keogh hit 4-3 against Down for Wexford. And Niamh Mallon and Ailish O'Reilly combined for 3-9 in that game Galway against Clare. So, I mean, this weekend really shows like there's a real, even in the senior championship, there's 2 tiers in terms of class between the teams. And this weekend, whatever way the fixtures happened, just didn't get a competitive game there.
Yeah, I think for the last few years, well, at one point there, it was Kilkenny, Cork, Galway, and Waterford, Tipperary were kind of in the background. I would have been covering, quarterfinals, semi-finals, and they would have been maybe playing each other, or they would have been just falling short of the Corks or Kilkennys. But then Waterford getting through to the All-Ireland final, and I know people had, argued against the layout of the draw, that it was kind of nearly set up, that a different team would be getting through to the final, and then with the way the final went, and it, Cork end up kind of blowing them away. At the same time, though, it's good for Waterford to be making that breakthrough and to be getting in there with the top, what we say the top 3, and that seems to be still kind of the case. Like it's Cork, Kilkenny, Galway. They're still up there, and Waterford, Tipperary are still not far behind. Like Beth Carton, scoring 11 points, like that's Beth Carton's kind of trademark, she is, I did an interview with her before. I've written a piece about her. She's from De La Salle, same club as John Milan. He would have been involved with the club team down there, has worked closely with her. And, he would say she just breathes the sport. She's down there every day coaching, or she's training, or she's out pucking ball herself, taking her frees. She's just the heartbeat of that team, and a huge driving force of that breakthrough, and getting past that, what you mentioned there, like maybe the second tier or the second group behind the big 3, a huge player for them. And then the other teams, then it's hard to be competitive then against those teams when they're so dominant in the sport. Mm-hmm. Like it's hard to read into those kind of score lines. They're punishing hits for the other teams to have to take. Again, as no more than in the ladies' football, like the bigger tests are kind of to come, and it's annoying for both sports, because we only kind of start to really take notice of them when they're hitting the real business end, like quarterfinal, semi-final, final stages, and it's the same teams that are coming up, and they're not really being challenged by those maybe teams beneath. Well, not say beneath them, but when you're seeing score lines like that, the gulf is pretty big. Like, you're not going to see them post those kind of scorelines against each other because they're so tight. But you want to see the competition expand as well.
No question. And like, that's what I'm saying. Like, for Camogie needed Waterford and Tipperary to come along, because Cork, Kilkenny and Galway had it on lock for the last decade. And to see Waterford get to the final was massive. To see Tipperary beat Galway in the league final was huge as well. To win the first league title, Division 1 anyway, since 2004. Like, that was massive for Tipperary to get over the line there. They're looking great. Karen Kennedy, Eamon McGrath, Grace O'Brien, caught the band back in the panel. Like, they are looking sharp. They're looking strong. I think there's if I'm kind of to do a power ranking on who's the most likely to win it, I'd say Cork right now are favourites to retain. I would put Galway 2, I'd put Tip 3, and I'd put Kilkenny 4. I think Kilkenny don't look 100% under Chap Clare, and then I would put Waterford probably 5, because they haven't smashed through a Kilkenny or a Cork yet. And I think once they do that, I'll believe it. Once they get that kind of vindicating victory, even though they drew a Kilkenny in Nolan Park this year.
Yeah, I think that, I'd probably agree with Kilkenny. I find it hard to knock Kilkenny still, because they're just like, they're such a strong team. Like, they've got great depth, and they've played through so much hurt as well, to get to All-Ireland finals, and to not win one in 22 years before winning it in 2016, and then I remember covering it the year they won it in the COVID year. They know how to grind it out. They know how to have to play through the hurt to get to where they want. And I've seen them build through that. Now, Tipperary, same as Waterford, a real breakthrough team, and like that, the sport needed them to expand it, to sell the game a bit more, and to put pressure on the likes of Galway, Kilkenny, Cork. And they're doing that. It's hard to do it. It's hard to be the team that's knocking on the door. Like, it's hard, you want to be the one that pushes through. You don't want to be the team that just gives, the champions or the finalists a run out on the way to the final. And that's a hard role that they've had to play. But, maybe they will pip ahead Kilkenny this year.
Yeah, no, definitely remains to be seen, but definitely showing anyway their superiority this weekend. One more comment in from Joseph. He says, awfully stopping Kerry. Yeah, that's the back to the 5 in a row thing about the rivals being there to wait to stop them in the final, potentially. And imagine that as a hurling final. Imagine if we get a first ever Clare versus Limerick All-Ireland hurling final, and Limerick could do 5 in a row, or Clare could stop them. I don't think there would be a more anticipated hurling final for a long, long time. Anyway, that's the episode recapped. An hour and 40 minutes in the book. It's been a good one. Sinead, thank you very much for jumping on. Thank you to everybody who put in a comment. It really, really improves the episode. And yes, until the next one, guys, Torah.